Midterm votes matter.
Hello, and welcome to the 2022 Good Trouble Voting Rights Podcast, sponsored by Black Women for Positive Change, featuring host Dr. Georgia Dunston and co-host Dr. Stephanie Myers. This is the podcast producer, Damon Naylor. I want to inform you that this particular session is critical because it addresses specific reasons why you should vote in the upcoming December 6th runoffs and how your vote impacts the areas of spirituality, family, economics, community, and so much more. With that being said, ladies, take it away.
Well, welcome to everyone. It is our pleasure and our honor today to be having our podcast right on the brink of the vote, the midterm vote and the runoff vote in the state of Georgia for the U.S. Senate seat. And we are very excited today to talk with two outstanding individuals who live in Georgia and who are helping to turn the vote out. And we're going to talk today with a family, a husband and wife team who are members of the clergy, who are also activists in the community. So let me introduce our guest, and then we will get started. Dr. Dunston and I will get started with the conversation. So we want to congratulate you and all the other leaders in the state of Georgia because you are breaking history, and we are very, very proud.
Yes.
Dr. Dwayne Turner, who is our guest this morning, earned his bachelor's degree from the University of St. Louis and in criminal justice and theology. He has his PhD from the Newburgh Seminary in theology and a doctorate of education in organizational leadership in qualitative research. He's the pastor of the Abundant Grace Baptist Church in Fayetteville, Georgia, with a goal and a spiritual formation to change lives. Dr. Turner is past president of the Fayetteville, Georgia branch of the NAACP, and together he and his wife, First Lady Jessica Turner, have a media ministry called Talk with the Turners. He's also an Army veteran and proud father of 5 girls. So welcome, Dr. Dwayne Turner, this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And the other part of this wonderful, powerful team is Mrs. Jessica Turner, who grew up in Danville, Virginia, which is the hometown of one of our good brothers, Marcus Hughes. And that's how we met the Turner family.
That's right.
Her dad was a pastor for 40 years, so she has a tremendous background in the faith field with a license to preach the gospel from 2008. She also has the wonderful gift of singing, and she's lent her gift through song to travel all over the country and regionally, singing background for a top performer in Tyler Perry's stage plays, and also singing background for Fred Hammond. So that's wonderful. Her passion for media has been in radio and television for over 20 years. And as I mentioned earlier, she and Dr. Dwayne Turner are hosts of the weekly talk show that can be seen on Roku cable. All right, so welcome and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'd like to just start off with a conversation, and this question is for both of you. So perhaps Dr. Turner, if you'd answer first, and then First Lady Turner, what got you involved with voting rights in the first place? At a time where, you can see people saying, oh, I don't want to vote, I don't care, or you even see faith leaders that say, this is not the role of my church to be involved in voting and civil rights. Why are the two of you involved? What is your passion and your feeling? How did you get involved in the first place?
Well, I could speak for me, and I think I speak for both of us. I think it's vitally important that every leader in the community, and traditionally the pastor has always been not just the leader of the church, but quote unquote the leader of the leader within the community, where information is disseminated, one who could be relied upon to help the community to dispel disinformation, so to speak. And they were normally the gatekeepers of the Black community. And I see that myself in much the same light today here in 2022. So I'm not quite sure if you know that I am from the Bible Belt, the heart of the Bible Belt, which is Mobile, Alabama.
All right.
Well, I think most of us have a vision about Alabama and the different atrocities that took place there. Martin Luther King, of course, with the Selma March. And so we're just rich in civil rights activity and pro-rights. And so right now, at this point, I thought it was vitally important. It was always incumbent upon me to immerse myself based on, I do feel that I am an educated man, I'm an enlightened man, and I felt that I was in the forefront. Being the president of the NAACP didn't hurt at all either. But I do believe that there is a need for the church to merge with civil rights as well as to stay engaged with politics. However, I understand there is a balancing that needs to take place as well to keep church separate from state. And so I will pass the mic at this point and give it back to you all with just that, those comments there.
To add to, yes,
Thank
to add,
you, please. Mhm.
yes, to add to my husband, and I do ditto his statements. To go a little further, my background, as you mentioned, Dr. Myers, my father was a pastor of the Union Street Missionary Baptist Church. I don't know if you all are aware, Danville, Virginia has deep roots for civil rights. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. frequent Danville, Virginia on several occasions, part of demonstrations. And my father, with his background, as I was coming up, and also to Dr. Dunston and Brother Damon, he instilled in us very early, even in childhood, the importance of not only civil rights, but making a difference through voting. My father, and I remember saying to him, "Daddy, I'm too young to vote." He said, "No, the process starts now." And I was about 10 years old. He said, "This process starts now." One of the things that he instilled is to help me to understand that your vote does make a difference. And not only does your vote make a difference, but your words to others that their vote makes a difference is how you build upon the process of these elections. I think for me personally, on a personal level, the reason why I'm so passionate is because the monumental presidential election going back to 2007, 2009 with Barack Obama is when I really became heavily involved in the political process to see how so many came together and were able to turn the tide and make a difference. So not just from that, but to see how your vote does make a difference is what I believe my husband and I build upon with our membership, and allowing people to understand the process, giving them the information, the correct information to understand how the process works and how they do affect change and effect change in today's world.
Okay, well, you mentioned President Obama. That's really when our organization got started.
Wow.
We were Black Women for Obama. And after he got reelected, we realized he didn't need that anymore. So then we had to decide, well, do we stay or do we quit or what? So we decided to transform ourselves into Black Women for Positive Change. So we all kind of got into this around the same time. That's wonderful. Well, you talk about the importance, and Dr. Turner, you've had such a background in education, and I assume you've worked with young people for years through the church and through your career. What do you see as the mood right now among our Gen Zs and our millennial young people toward civic involvement and voting?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that question. And it's interesting that you asked that. I am troubled right now with the state of affairs with our youth. As traditionally, that you could see the changes in trend of what we used to wear back then as opposed to what we do now. That in and of itself is not alarming, but it does speak volumes about our thinking and the disconnect that is there. What I find with the youth today is that they are disengaged. They're very suspicious of authority. They are very suspicious of leadership. There is a trend that I'm doing a study and a research on right now. There is a downward trend of the church with Black youth who have declared themselves to be a part of the new religious sect called the New Religious Nuns. In other words, they're non-denomination. They don't go to church, and their world And we are partly at fault for this as far as with automation, social media, but they engage the world from a social media standpoint. If they're going to entertain church, it's going to be by or via social media. It's been good and bad as far as that is concerned, because during COVID, that gave us a mechanism to keep ourselves engaged with church. But now post-COVID, now what is not known is what are the effects of social media and having so much access to what would require a in-person fellowship, and how is it going to impact the church. And with that being said, when we know that when young people are not engaged with leadership, with those who are enlightened, there's going to be a disconnect with politics and how it pertains to them. And there is where it seems to be the great divide. Young people cannot easily connect the dots where politics connect or segue with their lives. In other words, what has Barack Obama done for me lately? They can't see the necessary connections there. And what I do is, what our challenge is as leaders, as adults, as informed individuals, to connect the dots as far as to let them understand that there is a connection with your life in when policies are made, where they derive from, and what are the winds behind those policies. They are directly connected with your pocketbook, whether you want to believe it or not. I mean, even we have to point these things out, and I do it quite often with my daughters who are in college now, to understand you are getting relief on your education, which you would owe if you didn't get that, because of the president, because of policies that are put in place that have taken you into consideration. All right. And the fact that you may demographically may not be as privileged as others, they have taken you into consideration. And so therefore you don't have to pay these bills. You don't have to be burdened by bills of education. That's just one aspect of how it relates. But we have to connect those dots in a real way so that they can, how it relates to them. If we don't do it, they'll never get it.
Those are good points. Well, First Lady Turner, I'd like to ask you, with your background in the media, Dr. Turner just mentioned social media and the impact of how that's affecting our young people. Do you think that our community, the baby boomers, the X generation, the so-called adult leaders, do you think that we're using social media effectively enough, using music effectively enough to reach our young people? And if you don't think we are, how can we?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked. I had a moment to reflect yesterday as I was talking to another social media influencer. And to your question and to the point, no, we are not using the platforms enough. A lot of people take for granted or think there's an over excessive use of social media, and indeed it is. And if there is an over excessive use in a negative way, we certainly can use it in a positive way. I think, Brother Damon, you would understand this, that we were taught in media that subconsciously, the more that you promote something, it's not excessive, because you have different people tuned in at different times. I do believe, from my standpoint and background, that the more that we are now on our each individual platforms, and platforms such as these, getting the word out, it is helpful. What I would like to see more of, even for me, that we are working on, is to create a better platform for the next year to really promote the political process. Young people are social media platform driven. We're going to have to take advantage of Instagram. We are going to have to take more advantage of Facebook, Twitter, even TikTok. I think creatively, because music is a way that young people connect. It wouldn't be crazy. It would be creative to come up with a John Lewis choreographic dance and really promote him. Seriously, here in Atlanta, there's an iconic graffiti wall that we pass every day, my husband and I, when we're shopping or when we're working. It would be awesome to go down to that wall and just promote John Lewis. Let's get t-shirts. If this is based upon this gentleman who believed in good trouble. It's time now to use the platform that some people think is trouble, but it's not. Facebook is powerful.
Now connect this to the voting. Exactly what you're saying. How would this
I'm going to
connect to the
connect it.
voting?
How do we connect it? Because we drive home voting. We drive home the importance. We talk to those who are in the political arenas. We talk to Pastor Ralph Warnock. We talk to even Herschel Walker. We go out and really connect the dots by getting the young people involved at creating platforms, creating more programs that are, even Marcus and I talked about, we've got to do something that balances music and the politics together. So what we're planning on doing is having a concert. There was a Rock the Vote concert. Do you all remember that years ago, where you had the political powers and you also combined those who were in the musical field to both promote voting together? Why does it work and how does it work? Because you're bringing that balance. You're bringing the young people who are going to hear through the music and subconsciously, I need to vote. I need to get out and vote. It drives home a powerful message, but we've got to understand that we have to take advantage of these platforms. We've got to use Facebook more and drive home voting. Dr. Stephanie, Dr. Dunston, we're going to have to take advantage of going on Facebook more with live videos to talk about the importance of not only this upcoming election, but how we affected change in the last elections. Allow young people to understand the history of where we were to understand where we are going. But you've got to connect the dots through Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and also Twitter.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Turner, and then I'm sure Dr. Dunston wants to ask a question, but Dr. Turner, this whole issue of teaching how to vote that you referred to in the young people, do you think that the civics programs in schools are adequate right now? Or do you think that the church should play a role in trying to make sure young people are educated about voting, learn about the midterms, learn about the runoff in Georgia? Are the schools playing enough role?
Well, the answer in short to that, I would say, is no. As it pertains to the schools. And here's my reason why. Most schools, they should be engaged in this way. We understand this, but most schools are challenged with babysitting our youth because they are just away with it. In most cases, especially in the inner cities, the teachers spend the entirety of their day as far as their complaints, as far as what they have, their response to questionnaires. They say we spend so much time babysitting and trying to correct temperaments and trying to keep the kids engaged and stop them from running out of school and keep them off of social media, that we have little to no time to actually teach the curriculum of what they need to get to prepare them to be productive individuals in society. Should they be teaching? Yes, they should. We know that. But how do we go about this? And that is what's not understood as to what approach do we take. We're in a time now where it really is critical to where when young children are being disciplined, then the parents get involved and criticize. They demonstrate to faculty, to principals, to politicians that they don't want their children being disciplined outside of the home. And that is problematic because if you can't discipline children, if you can't get them to sit down and listen to the messaging, you can't get the messaging through. So that is the dilemma. So it's very complicated and it's not a one size fit all as it pertains to us. Now, the church, I am very sensitive when we start talking about the church and trying to engage too many different topics, too many different areas. For example, there is an issue going on in Atlanta right now with a well-known church, and this church was bringing in advisors, as far as economic advisors, and thereby what the results of that was that the individuals end up being taken for money, and it was an investigation of fraud. So we're in the middle of a fraud investigation right now. So the church has got a black eye because of this. So we have to run a fine line. Now, the church has suffered so many different issues and being disparaged based on the lack of character of his leaders, of his congregants. That right now we can't stand not one more impropriety as it pertains to churches and what we do. So we have to balance what we bring to the church, what we offer to the church, and let them know that this is not something that we are espousing. Because if we're honest with ourselves, not everyone in the church are Democrats. Not everyone in the church is Republican. Some people may be independents. So how do you engage them without being offensive? You know, we understand that when you come to our church and you are members of a particular church, we know that you believe in Jesus Christ, but we don't have a homogenized population in church when it comes to politics. So how do we broach that issue? How do we bring it up without being offensive?
Okay, good point. Dr. Dunston, you have a question that you want to enter in.
Yes, I do. And thank you for the conversation that you have already contributed and raised so many fundamental questions to me that I especially would want to present to you. First of all, there are certain keywords that both of you have mentioned in responses thus far. Keywords, one of which that struck me first in your responses, the need to make connection, to make connection between the events and activities. Connection. I already said that when I came to Black Women for Positive Change, I came after while Dr. Myers is a co-founder of the organization. I came recently to the group, and what drew me to the group was Black Women for Positive Change. I was not with them back with Obama, but the idea of how do we make positive change in meeting the challenges that face us. It was really, quite honestly, for me, the power of the thought of positive change and the way, and I want to underscore that because our civil rights history as a people is largely rooted in the nonviolent civil rights methodology, shall I say, of King. And it also is the focus of the John Lewis voter rights effort, nonviolence. So I wanted to establish that as a foundation because the reason I'm so excited about having you two for the questions we talked about, to get your importance on making connection today, particularly for our young people, but it certainly is an intergenerational need that we have to make connections between our faith and science. God blessed me to be a trained scientist, and it's no coincidence. I don't believe anything is coincident in life. It's no coincidence that my science, my passion is our human genome, this gift that God gave us to know who we are, and more importantly, to know Him. And
Dr. Dunston, let's let Dr. Turner and First Lady Turner respond to what you said.
Yes,
because you just raised those questions.
But let me put it in the context of a question that I really wanted both of them to respond to in this regard. And that was, I see this battle that we're in now as a spiritual battle that's rooted in our sense of identity. And I wanted each of you to really respond to the challenge that we have today from your perspective in terms of a spiritual battle and how that relates to who we are as a people.
Listen, my father always told me, if you don't know your purpose, you really have no direction. Mm-hmm. To go to your point of what you're saying, we are really dealing with identity even in our ministry. And my husband will tell you that, because you have to understand where you are. The number one issue I think right now that we are facing with not just the young people, but even with the generations before and after us, is that they don't know why they're voting. They're really not understanding why. we have to cast this vote, why it's important. There are so many people that I remember when I worked in media in Virginia that would call me and ask me, Jessica, who do I vote for? That is an atrocity, because we all need to know what's at stake. During the presidential election with Donald Trump, that is when so many people were saying, well, or asking the question, well, should I vote? What do I do? What don't I do? So it boils down, to get to your point, first understand why we have to vote. There is a breakdown. There has been a breakdown lately, even with the young people. Young people, I was telling Dr. Stephanie earlier, don't even know who their civic leaders are. They can't identify. So our responsibility right now in the church and with the youth, and that's why I brought up the music aspect, is to get back how we can help our people understand who they are and to correlate their officials and also elected officials, why it relates to them and how those individuals relate to them. Because see, you have to see also yourself in another person to identify who you are. So to your point, and I'm gonna let my husband pick up, we've got to get back to education and educating people on why they are voting. You just don't go to the ballot and pick that person or that individual. We've got to help people understand what's at stake and why.
Good point, Dr. Turner.
Yes, great point. I want to be brief here, but I see the positive in just even in the results here in Georgia. For Black men, there's an interest in voting, although they don't necessarily. The studies show that they don't necessarily connect with Stacey Abrams. There is an uptick in Black men who are voting. So it's, for some reason, something is getting through. But here's what I would want: is if I would leave us with one thing, this is what I would leave us with. And what we typically do is we don't vote for something, as my wife says. So what I see by my estimation is that the trend is that Black people become energized in order to vote. They become galvanized because they are voting against Trump. They are voting against hatred in politics. They are voting against something. But when the tides are down, we have to keep these trends up. Understand that it's important that we vote whether things are against, whether they're not, whether things are good or not. We have to start voting for something as opposed to against something. And when we know, and likewise, it's positive in identifying who we are. Once we identify with who we are not, then with who we are. You have to first know who you're not a liar. You're not a thief. You're not, the Bible didn't declare that you were cursed from the ground. These are lies that have been perpetrated against us. So when we understand who we are not, we connect with who we are. And identify those things, then we'll have a community that is in full.
Excellent. Well, one of the ways that we are trying to help people to address what you've talked about are through the John Lewis Good Trouble pledge cards that Dr. Dunston sent you a package of last week. And in 2023 and 2024, leading toward the 2024 election, we hope to mobilize literally hundreds of thousands of people to sign the John Lewis pledge cards, pledging to vote. So we hope to work with you together on that. And the idea of a concert, we've been talking about wanting to do a concert as well. We have some great relationships with some Motown leaders and producers that are willing to work with us. So perhaps we can mobilize music, social media, the pledge cards, and find a way to reach our young people and our people who don't know what their role is. So we appreciate that. I know we're kind of closing up, so Dr. Dunston, I'll hand off to you to make closing remarks.
Well, I just love what you just brought in, the idea that we have for a concert and how that dovetails with getting the message out. And I will mention that Black women have one of our Black Women for Positive Change members was running for a congressional seat out of Los Angeles this year, Jan Perry. And unfortunately, she didn't get her district vote. However, As Dr. Myer said, we have connections with persons who have been historical with Motown Records, who actually did a promotional for her campaign. And I'm sitting here getting so excited because of this podcast with the idea of partnering. Black women would love to partner with you because of who you are and where you are and who we are as an organization. We are based in changing the culture of violence in America. So if we could even use this podcast as a foundational approach for a takeoff from this year, from Midterm Votes Matter, as a platform for looking towards 2024. And then Pastor Dwayne, what you said about Black men, bringing them in, that's another area that we are not only Black women for positive change, but we are Black women for positive change along with good brothers. We have good brothers who are equally part of our organization that work along with us. Yeah. And so if we could just say it, I'm very excited about this John Lewis pledge, because this pledge grows out of his giving his life for voting. And if we can agree that this pledge is a commitment that we would make to use Georgia as our base, since he was a representative in Congress and his focus was on saving the soul of America. Yes. If we could take this as a memorial for his legacy of good trouble, and somehow bring our young people in and our men in with the same vigor when we were against slavery, when we were against the things that got us involved, and realized that voting is a behavior. And now, if you will allow me to just make this statement as a scientist, we study behavior because we found that behavior is the main reason for the differences that we see in health of different populations. And that's what I study as a scientist, the genetic basis of differences in the diseases among population. And those studies, epidemiology, show that voting is a behavior, and that all behavior of the decisions you make about how you're going to live your life is rooted in your sense of identity.
All right.
So that's where.
Well, that's a good note to wrap up on.
Oh, I know we got close because of the time, but if we could think about really working together, planning a concert where we recognize that voting is the most powerful, non-violent method of change. As a change agent, voting is the most potent, powerful, non-violent change agent. And if we could think, Dr. Myers, about working collaboratively with this couple, this powerful leadership couple, in terms of how we build out the John Lewis Good Trouble, the Good Trouble voter rights pledge with a million signees, just like we had the Million Man March. We want to have the million person sign up of this John Lewis pledge for 2024.
All right. Okay, Damon, I think
thank you, Dr. Myers.
We'll wrap up here.
Midterm votes matter.